2. Introduction. Every day from the very moment we wake up till the time we retreat to bed, we come face to face with problems that we have to solve. We seldom wonder, what really qualifies to be a problem? How do we go about solving the endless series of problems that we face? What makes us perceive a problem as a problem? What steps are involved in the solving problems? The attempt to find answers to the same has intrigued researchers from multiple disciplines. Because of the centrality of problem solving, it has been studied extensively by psychologists interested in the nature of thinking and cognition. In psychology, early attempts to understanding problem solving were made by Gestalt psychologists and later by information processing theorists. This module will help us find answers to problem solving. In our discussion, we will focus on real-life examples on problem solving rather than on solving artificial laboratory-type problems. 3. Define. In the context of cognitive psychology, a problem is any situation in which we are trying to reach a goal and we must find a means to reach that goal. Think of a problem that you may have encountered in the recent past. How did you deal with the problem? Write step-by-step process of thinking and acting on the problem. A problem can be as simple as, how did you ensure that you will wake up on time to reach work or for your class? How did you decide how will you reach your destination, may it be college, office, hospital or any other place? What will you eat and how will you procure your food? Whether these will form the set of your current problems or any other issues such as seeking employment, solving a mathematical notation, getting good grades, providing care for an elderly member of the family, or making larger profits in business will all depend on your personal context. But all these are problems that people have to solve. Thus, each individual tries to solve problems on a day-to-day basis. Problem solving or creating solutions to problems is a very important cognitive process or task that all of us engage in. However, a problem may differ from previously encountered problems or it may be like other problems. It may put variable demands and also elicit different types of thinking in the person trying to solve them. 3.1. The structure of a problem. Psychology Paper 1. Cognitive Science. Let us look at the problems mentioned above once again and try to come up with solutions for the same. To be able to wake up on time, you will have to decide whether you want to put up an alarm on any device such as phone, television or music system or ask anybody in the family to wake you up. To reach a destination, you are likely to plan in advance how long it will take to reach there and what means of transport may be available for reaching there. To decide what you will eat, you will have to weigh endless options whether to cook at home or bring cooked food from outside home. If cooking at home, then what resources and materials are available and what and how much can be cooked from it. Likewise, if food is ordered from outside, what can be ordered and how much. You are also likely to weigh the financial aspect and a number of other aspects, such as choice of cuisine, location, etc., while solving the problem of what will you eat. Figure 1. A problem has an initial state, a goal state and a set of path or operators for reaching that goal. From the discussion above, one may conclude that solving a problem entails the goal to eat something and the numerous paths that might be undertaken to reach the goal, from where and what to procure for eating. Each path includes numerous sub-steps and sub-goals that fit together to meet the larger goal. Thus, putting it in very simple terms, every problem has an initial stage or a current situation that helps define and delimit the nature of the problem, a desired outcome or the goal that needs to be achieved through a series of steps, and a path for reaching that goal. The problem space theory, Newell and Simon, 1972, states that problem solving is a search with problem space. They define problem space as the set of states or possible choices that the problem solver faces at each of the steps in moving from the initial state to the goal state. The problem solver moves through the space from state to state by various operations. Now let us move to understanding the classes of problems. 4. Classes of problems. For solving any problem, the first and the foremost requirement is to be able to clearly identify and define a problem. Problems can be classified into two categories: well-defined problems and ill-defined problems. The well-structured and ill-structured distinction originated with Reitman, 1964, where he classified problems based on information on three components, namely, start state, goal state and transformation function. Let us read about them. 4.1 Well-defined problems. When are we able to think about a problem better? Clearly the answer to this question is when we are able to identify and clearly define the problem at hand. Directed or rational thinking begins. The structure of a problem. Initial state, goal state, path, operators. Psychology Paper 1. Cognitive Science. When a particular problem is well-defined. In a well-defined problem, the initial state, the goal state and one or more paths or the intermediate legal transition states or operators to obtain that goal are clearly defined. The path of such a problem can be specified in terms of a series of intermediate states that may be considered its sub-goals. The way in which one moves from one state or sub-goals to the next state or sub-goal is defined by a set of rules. All of these are all specified with clarity and certainty in a well-defined problem. For instance, in the game of chess, the initial state is defined by the players lined up on the chessboard for the opening move. The final goal state is defined as checkmate. The operators are the legal moves of the game that help achieve the sub-goals and eventually the final goal of checkmate. Picture 1. A game of chess consists of 64 squares, 8 rows and 8 columns. It is a game that has an initial state, players lined up on the chessboard for the opening move, a goal, checkmate, and a set of operators, the legal moves of the game, and is thus a well-defined problem. Another classic game to understand problem solving is the Hanoi Tower problem. The Tower of Hanoi was invented by the French mathematician Édouard Lucas, 1883, and has been used frequently in problem-solving studies. The Tower of Hanoi is shown in the figure below. The player is given a set of rules to start with. The discs of different sizes are stacked on the first of 3 pegs. The problem is well-defined. Discs have to be moved to the third peg. While doing so, only the top disc can be moved to the other peg, with the restrictions that only one disc can be moved at one time and no larger disc can be placed on a smaller disc. Psychology Paper 1. Cognitive Science. Picture 2. The Tower of Hanoi puzzle consists of 3 pegs and several discs of varying sizes. Given a start state when the discs are stacked on one peg, the task is to reach the goal state in which the discs are stacked on a specified peg. There are certain rules that only one disc can be moved at one time and no larger disc can be placed on a smaller disc. The solution to the problem is based on the mathematical recursive principle. To solve the problem, one must find a path through the problem space to progress from the initial state to the final goal state. Picture 3. The solution of Hanoi Tower is based on mathematical recursive principle. When directed thinking is applied to the problem, it would result in the problem being solved in the minimum number of moves, that can be calculated by applying the mathematical formula to n. Psychology Paper 1. Cognitive Science. 1. Where n denotes the number of disks, i.e. for a 3-disk problem, a minimum of 7 moves will be required to solve the puzzle. 4.2. Ill-defined problems. All problems cannot have such a well-defined problem. Many of the daily life problems seem remote from the problems of chess and the Tower of Hanoi stated above. For instance, getting a good job or making a successful career or finding a life partner may be a problem for which no set operators can function in a directed manner. Here, although the beginning is defined with clarity, the goal state may not be defined in a finite way. Here, how one defines a good job or a successful career or what characteristics one wants in a life partner may have different interpretations for different people. These problems are ill-defined as the initial state, the goal state and the paths or operators that can be taken to achieve the goals are ambiguous. Ill-defined problems are those in which the goal state, the initial state and the operators are not clearly defined. For example, writing a reflective journal, painting a picture and creating a bouquet of flowers are two ill-defined problems as their solutions and paths to achieve the goal cannot be spelled out clearly at the beginning of the task or at the initial state. 5. Problem-solving process. You have already read about what qualifies to be a problem and what well-defined and ill-defined problems are. In the section that follows, let us get acquainted with the process of problem solving. Let us consider some general problem-solving strategies first. John Bransford and Barry Stein, 1993, have used the acronym IDEAL for 5 steps in such strategies. I. Identify problems and opportunities. D. Define goals and represent the problems. E. Explore possible strategies. A. Anticipate outcomes and act. L. Look back and learn. Psychology Paper 1. Cognitive Science. Figure 2. The ideal problem-solving model proposed by John Bransford and Barry Stein, 1993. Figure 2. The ideal problem-solving model proposed by John Bransford and Barry Stein, 1993. Let us examine each of these steps in detail. 5.1 Identifying the problem. Read the following conversation between two friends. Rena, I keep asking for a peon but my officer does not appoint a peon. Shabana, did you try talking to her about it? Rena, I have made repeated attempts to explain her that a peon needs to be appointed. She says we do not have a post for a peon and taking a post is a tedious and long process. Shabana, but why do you want to get a peon appointed? Rena, because otherwise I have to do all work on my own and the officer keeps asking me to come to her office for various explanations and file work. Her office is at the ground floor while my desk is at the second floor and with no lift elevator I have to take the stairs. I get so tired doing this all through the day. Can you identify what problem is Rena facing? One may likely to say that she wants a peon to be appointed. But is it really the appointment of the peon that she wants or is it that she does not want to climb the stairs repeatedly through the day as it is a tiring exercise for her? One of the critical steps in solving a problem is identifying the problem correctly. A number of times people jump to naming the first problem that comes to their mind without actually identifying the true and solvable problem. Finding a solvable problem leads us to take specific action in solving the problem. Psychology Paper 1. Cognitive Science. 5.2 Defining the goals and representing the problem. In the above stated problem, what should Rena do? If we identify the problem as appointment of a peon, then the goal is to try to convince the officer to appoint one. But if we represent the problem as Rena getting tired making repeated visits to her officer, then the goal is to cut down on the number of visits. In each of the cases the problem solving will take a different path depending on the goal chosen. In addition to that, to represent the problem and set the goal, you have to focus attention on relevant information, understand the words of the problem and understand the problem as a whole. To understand this better, read the following problem. You and your friend decide to go trekking. You have reached a riverbank and you see 2 poles at the side of the bank. You plan to cross the 50 feet deep, 20-meter wide and several miles long river. You have a pair of pliers, candle, matchbox and an endless supply of rope. How will you and your friend cross the river? How did you solve the problem? Did you try to use all the provided materials while trying to find the solution? Are the factors impeding or accelerating reaching a solution? This problem is instrumental in understanding that while representing a problem, you have to focus only on the relevant information. Here, the most relevant of all information is that you have an endless supply of rope and 2 poles at each side of the riverbank. All other information given does not help in solving the problem. Second, it is important to understand the words of the problem. The language used to define a problem powerfully determines how it will be represented mentally and how the problem will be approached. It appears that human perception and comprehension of the problem influences the ease with which the problem will be solved. Lastly, the entire problem needs to be seen and dealt as a whole rather than focusing on the individual parts of the problem. 5.3 Exploring possible solution strategies. Think of the problem that you tried to solve in the past. Did you explore all the possible strategies for solving the problem? Did you seek advice from anyone to solve the problem? Did that person come up with a solution that you may have not thought of? We all face problems and try to find solutions to the same. But it is not unlikely that we feel that some of us are better problem solvers than others. Why is this so? This is because some of us better identify the problem and also explore all the possible solution strategies. While some of us may only solve problems in a set fashion. Creative problem solvers come up with new and creative solutions to everyday problems. The kinds of procedures and strategies that can be applied for problem solving will be discussed in detail in the next module. 5.4 Anticipating outcomes, acting and looking back. After representing the problem and exploring the possible solutions, the next step is to weigh all the solutions and select the best possible solution among all and anticipate the consequences of that solution. Once you have chosen the plan, you will act on it. It is obvious that the plan will meet some obstacles, and along the way you will have to devise strategies to deal with each of. Psychology Paper 1. Cognitive Science. These obstacles in order to reach the larger goal. For instance, it is possible that you make a study plan and are able to execute it for some days, but then you have unexpected guests someday and that disturbs your plan. Here, you will have to find a way to compensate for the time you spent with the guests. Finally, it is important to look back at the entire situation and critically evaluate whether the entire problem was dealt with successfully and whether the desired outcome was met. Here, the paths and the final state of the problem will become instrumental in deciding how one will act in a problem similar to a current one. The feedback one receives by reflecting on all the steps taken to solve the problem would feed into future problem solving. The strategies that led to success are likely to be repeated, and those that did not yield the desired results are likely to be avoided in the future. 6. Summary. A problem is any situation in which we are trying to reach a goal and we must find a means to reach that goal. A problem has an initial state, a goal state, and a set of path or operators for reaching that goal. Problems can be classified into two categories: well-defined problems and ill-defined problems. In a well-defined problem, the initial state, the goal state, and one or more paths or operators to obtain that goal are clearly stated. Ill-defined problems are those in which the goal state, the initial state, and the operators are not clearly defined. Problem solving involves 1. Identifying the problem and opportunities. 2. Defining goals and representing the problems. 3. Exploring the possible strategies. 4. Anticipating outcomes and acting. 5. Looking back and learning. 2. Introduction. In the previous module you have already studied what is the structure of a problem. You have also read about the distinctions between well-defined and ill-defined problems. In addition to that, the module also acquainted you to the process of problem solving. In this module, we will move a step further and identify what are the key approaches to problem solving. Following which we will look at the strategies that can be employed in solving different types of problems. We will also understand what factors hinder problem solving. We will also explore how brain impacts problem solving. 3. Key approaches to problem solving. Problem solving and thinking are closely intertwined. We already know that well-defined problems have an initial state, a goal state, and a path or a set of operators through which the goal state can be obtained. The problem of chess or the Tower of Hanoi involves what is called directed thinking. Such a goal-oriented approach to problem solving requires rational thinking and rational decision-making. In general, rational problem solving and rational decision makes an individual avoid wandering aimlessly and exploring unachievable options. It channelizes energy in the doable and achievable terms and saves time and manpower. But we are also aware that all problems are not well-defined. Ill-defined problems, unlike well-defined problems, cannot be approached in a straight fashion and eventually solved. A problem can be approached in two very different ways. During the early 20th century, the Gestalt psychologists contrasted productive thinking, Wertheimer, 1959, and reproductive thinking, Thorndike, 1911. When an individual reproduces the response to a given problem based on his/her past experience, it is called reproductive thinking. Reproductive thinking involves arriving at the solution of a problem by taking a tried and true path to the problem. By using rote memory, the thinker reproduces a series of steps that have been tried and tested to yield a workable solution to the problem. The previous module on operant conditioning familiarized you with trial and error behavior as observed by E.L. Thorndike, 1898. Thorndike in his classic experiment placed a hungry cat in a puzzle box. The cat would escape from the confinement of the box by discovering a lever that opened the door of the box. At first, the cat made random attempts to come out of the box, but once it discovered the escape lever, the cat quickly reproduced the solution to the problem in order to escape from the confinement. Trial and error may be regarded as a form of reproductive thinking. This, however, is not likely to yield out-of-the-box creative solutions. Paper number 1. Cognitive Science. In the second way, solving the problem requires something new and different to achieve the goal. Here, prior learning is not of help, and one has to think something non-obvious to solve the problem. You might have yourself experienced it sometimes that you had been struggling to find a solution to a seemingly never solvable problem. Suddenly the solution pops up almost all of a sudden. This kind of experience is called AHA experience. Kohler 1925 distinguished between this trial and error thinking and insight-based thinking in problem solving. Kohler spent 7 years studying the problem solving of chimpanzees. In one of the problems that he designed for the chimpanzees, he placed several crates in the vicinity of a chimpanzee. Hanging on the top of the cage of the chimpanzee is a banana, which the chimpanzee cannot reach. Kohler reported that the chimpanzee seemed to be lost in thought as to how to reach the banana, and then suddenly it gets an insight that the crates can be moved and stacked in form of a ladder to reach the banana. The chimpanzee quickly translates this thought into action. Kohler's experiment 1925 on insightful learning with chimpanzees. Kohler placed a chimpanzee in a cage. A banana was hanging on the top of the cage and the chimpanzee attempted to reach for the banana. Several crates were kept in the vicinity of a chimpanzee, which the chimpanzee later used to reach the banana. In one of the other problems, the chimpanzee insightfully learned to join the two sticks lying outside his cage in order to reach a banana which was otherwise out of the reach of the chimpanzee. According to Kohler, this insightful problem solving differs from trial and error learning. This type of thinking is called productive thinking, which requires insight and creativity. According to Gestalt psychologists, the thinker must see new and novel ways of organizing the problem. This may also require structuring the elements of thought and perception. It is argued that ill-defined problems often demand productive thinking as its solutions can be achieved through insight. Well-defined problems, on the other hand, are more likely to be solved through reproductive problem solving, but these are neat formulas for problem solving. In the section that follows, let us look at some of the general problem solving methods. 4. Problem solving methods. One of the important goals of research on problem solving has been to identify strategies to use when we are confronted with problems. There are two key methods to problem-solving algorithms and heuristics. Figure 1. Two key methods to problem-solving algorithms and heuristics. These methods will be discussed in depth in the following sections. Problem-solving methods. Algorithms heuristics. Paper number 1. Cognitive science. 4.1 Algorithms. An algorithm is a rule that correctly generates the solution to a problem given that one can devote sufficient time and effort to applying the rule. Two general algorithms are trial and error and systematic search. You have already read about trial and error in the previous section of the module. The second method is systematic search. To understand this, consider this example. If one wishes to solve anagrams for CTA, an algorithm to solve this will be to try every possible letter in every possible position until the word solution is reached. Thus in systematic search, every letter in every position in an anagram is tried systematically. This works well for smaller word combinations, but imagine if the same problem-solving technique were to be applied for Harpo-HB. The answer to this is Arachanophobia. It will be too daunting a task to attempt solving it going step by step, making each possible combination of the alphabets. Algorithms are often very time-consuming and they make great demands on working memory and long-term memory. 4.2 Heuristics. This brings us to the second type of search method called heuristics. Heuristic refers to a rule of thumb or a general strategy that may lead to a solution reasonably quickly with less computation cost. Taking the above stated example, heuristic for solving anagrams is to look for sequences of letters that occur frequently in English such as ism, etc. The second is to remove rarely occurring combinations and build on the knowledge of how words are combined and put together to make meaningful utterances. Commonly used problem-solving heuristics are random search, hill climbing, means ends analysis and analogies. Figure 2. Types of problem-solving heuristics. 1. Random search. 2. Hill climbing. 3. Means ends analysis. 4. Analogies. Random search. Random search is the simplest and cognitively one of the least demanding of all heuristic methods. Here, the problem solver randomly picks up a move and tests to see whether the goal state is achieved. You may have observed this when you play the game of cards, where cards are laid in form of a mat and the players have to match similar cards by picking up one card at a time. Often children use random search strategy in matching. Problem-solving heuristics. Random search, hill climbing, means ends analysis. Analogies. Paper number 1. Cognitive science. The cards. This may be due to their cognitive immaturity. Adults also apply random search in a number of situations. Hill climbing. Hill climbing is a knowledge-dependent heuristic where the problem solver looks one move ahead and chooses. Hill climbing is a knowledge-dependent heuristic where the problem solver looks one move ahead and chooses the move that most closely resembles the goal state. A classic problem in which the hill climbing heuristic is applied is the water jug task. Lukens, 1942, Atwood and Polson, 1976, Colvin et al., 2001. The problem presents a situation to the problem solver where she is provided with 3 jars of different capacities. Jar A, 8 ounces, jar B, 5 ounces, jar C, 3 ounces. Now, the initial state is that jar A is full of water, and the problem solver has to pour out water using the jars to arrive at 4 ounces in jar A, and in jar B the jars do not have any graduated lines and therefore one must pour until one either drains the jar or fills up the receiving jar entirely. Insert water jug problem. Here, if the problem solver chooses the hill climbing strategy, she might select a move where the water in the larger and medium jugs will have amounts close to the goal state. So, she pours water from the large jug into the medium one, and now one has 3 ounces of water in the large jug and 5 ounces of water in the medium jug. This is certainly closer to the goal than was in the initial state, but this hill climbing strategy does not lead to success in this case. A more demanding strategy is means ends analysis. Means ends analysis. Means ends analysis refers to comparing one's current state to the goal state and then finding a means or an operator to reduce the difference. Means ends analysis follows 3 consecutive steps. First, the algorithm determines the distance between the current state and the goal state. Second, it tests whether there is an available operator that reduces the distance between the current state and the goal state. Third, the procedure jumps back to the first step. The means ends analysis creates sub-goals, where the problem is broken into sub-problems until an operator is available that can be applied. Let us understand this better by applying means ends analysis to the 3-disk Tower of Hanoi task, where the main goal is to get all 3 disks on peg 3. To accomplish this, one must get the largest disk on peg 3, but in the initial state, one cannot move it owing to the stated rules of the puzzle where only one disk can be moved at a time, and there are 2 disks on the largest disk, and larger disk cannot be placed on the smaller disks. Here, one will have to try a sub-goal where the medium-sized disk has to be first moved out of the way. But again, this move is not possible as the small disk is in the way. The next sub-goal then becomes to move the small disk first. The question to ponder over here is that in this process, goals and sub-goals are being set until the entire problem is solved. Analogies. Paper number 1. Cognitive science. One of the other heuristic strategies that is often used in problem solving is using analogies. As a student, have you ever tried to solve a problem, especially in mathematics, assigned for home task by finding a similar problem worked out in the textbook? Indeed, you must have. This method of solving a particular problem by referring to an exemplar problem is called analogy. An analogy heuristic works on the similarities between the current problem and one solved in the past. Analogies describe similar structures and interconnect them to identify certain relations. Analogical reasoning, Copy, 1961, is generally thought to comprise of 5 sub-processes. 1. Retrieval of relevant information. 2. Mapping characteristics of the source onto the target. 3. Evaluating whether or not the analogy is valid for this particular problem. 4. Abstracting the relevant features shared by the source and the target. 5. Predicting characteristics of the target from what is known about the source. However, all problems cannot be solved using analogies as they sometimes create obstacles in problem solving rather than helping. This will be dealt in the next section on barriers to problem solving. Working backwards. Some problems can be solved faster and better using a working backwards strategy. Here, one begins at the goal state and moves backward to the unsolved initial problem. You may have tried to solve the maze puzzle using this strategy where one begins from the goal point. Figure. A maze puzzle helped the rat find its way to the cheese. Here, working backwards strategy works better and faster. Source. One of the advantages of working backwards is that one starts to see the sub-goals which become the milestones of achieving the final goal. Once the string of sub-goals projecting backward from the goal state are envisaged, solving the sub-goals can be achieved. However, working backward is viable only when the goal state is uniquely well-defined. Wickelgren, 1974. This strategy, however, may also be employed when setting intermediate deadlines to final submissions or presentations. Paper number 1. Cognitive Science. 5. Factors that hinder problem solving. Do you always reach solutions to problems instantly? Does it happen that sometimes you have to struggle hard finding solutions to certain problems? Think of the problems that you may have faced and remember what strategies did you apply to solve the problems of a similar nature. Most commonly, to solve a problem, we often refer to the problem solved in the past. There is a human tendency to use the strategies that have worked successfully in the past. We look for similarities and differences in the current problem and those solved in the past. You have read about these in the section on analogies. But sometimes, previous experiences or familiarity with a past problem can make problem solving more difficult rather than making it simpler. This is called fixation, where we become so habitual in trying to find solutions to problems of a similar kind that we do not attempt to think of alternate ways of solving the same problems. Mental sets. There are certain barriers that hinder problem solving. In this section, let us look more closely at these factors. Try to solve the problem given below. Try to connect all 9 dots by drawing 4 straight lines, without lifting the pen from the paper. Figure. The 9-dot problem. Here, the 9 dots have to be connected by drawing 4 straight lines, without lifting the pen from the paper. Sometimes, because of the fact that we try to persistently find solutions to problems only through the previously successful strategies, we hinder any novel ways to find solutions to problems. These are termed as mental sets. In this 9-dot problems, people often try one solution after the other, but each solution is constrained by a set response not to extend any line beyond the matrix. Look at the solution of the 9-dot problem given below. Paper number 1. Cognitive Science. Figure. The solution of the 9-dot problem. To solve the problem, one must overcome mental sets and think out of the box. To overcome mental sets, you must think outside the box. When in the 9-dot problem solution is constrained by a set response not to extend any line beyond the matrix, the solution is not reached. To achieve the goal, one has to think differently. Functional fixedness. Another barrier to problem solving is functional fixedness. We often use objects in the traditional way and do not try to use available resources in unusual ways. It is a tendency to regard the function of objects or ideas as fixed. German and Barrett, 2005. In other words, fixedness means thinking of an object as only functioning in its usual way. To understand this better, let us take the example of an imaginary situation. In one of the situations, one of the two friends gave up constructing a model of a treehouse as he did not have a pair of scissors to cut a long thread short. But another friend tried to create friction by rubbing the thread on the corner of a wall. As a result of it, the thread broke into 2 parts, which could now be used for the treehouse. Simply, the wall was not just seen in its conventional role. Functional fixedness and mental set became the key concepts of the Gestaltists to explain why productive thinking impeded creative and insightful problem solving. Along with these, confirmation bias, where we prefer information that confirms pre-existing positions or beliefs, while ignoring contradictory evidence, and response set, which is responding in most familiar ways, also obstruct problem solving. It is therefore important to be flexible while solving problems. 6. Problem solving and brain. We know that problem solving is one of the fundamental human cognitive processes. As a higher cognitive process, problem solving interacts with many other cognitive processes such as perception, encoding, searching, abstraction, learning, decision-making, inferences, and analysis on the basis of internal knowledge representation. All these cognitive processes, along with problem solving, are a function of the brain. The brain searches a solution for a given problem or finds a path to the solution. It can be seen as a search process in the memory space and set of alternative paths. A number of different types of cognitive processes and different steps are involved in problem solving. Research on brain and problem solving claims that many different parts of the brain are involved in problem solving. Using PET, ERP, fMRI techniques with both brain damaged and healthy participants, investigators have sought to discover how areas in the brain support problem solving. Using a modified version of the Tower of Hanoi, investigators found that brain activation in the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, bilateral parietal cortex, and bilateral premotor cortex increased as the task became more complex. Finch and et.al., 2002. These regions have strong influence on the working memory and executive processes. Patients with frontal lobe lesions find it difficult to solve the Tower of Hanoi problem using means-ends analysis. Further, the brain recalls and remembers previous experiences and finds analogies with problems previously solved by the brain. We conclude that problem solving is a complex human cognitive process. Human problem solving can be best understood by understanding the dynamic interplay between problems and goal representations, the processes of problem solving, contextual factors, and other cognitive factors such as the role of working memory, perception, encoding, and so forth. Paper number 1. Cognitive Science. 7. Summary. According to Kohler, insightful problem solving differs from trial and error learning. Reproductive thinking involves arriving at the solution of a problem by taking a tried and true path to the problem. Productive thinking requires insight and creativity. There are 2 key methods to problem solving: algorithms and heuristics. An algorithm is a rule that correctly generates the solution to a problem given that one can devote sufficient time and effort to applying the rule. 2 general algorithms are trial and error and systematic search. Heuristic refers to a rule of thumb or a general strategy that may lead to a solution reasonably quickly with less computation cost. Commonly used problem-solving heuristics are random search, hill climbing, means-ends analysis, and analogies. Restricting oneself to finding solutions to problems in habitual ways only and not attempting alternate ways of thinking about the same problems is termed fixation in problem solving. Mental sets, functional fixedness, confirmation bias hinder creative problem solving. Research on brain and problem solving claims that many different parts of the brain are involved in problem solving. Understand different theories of intelligence. Understand the role of 2. But, how do we consider these people intelligent? What do we actually But, how do we consider these people intelligent? The moment we talk about intelligent people, Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking and Steve Jobs are some of the most frequently occurring names in our minds. But, how do we consider these people intelligent? What do we actually understand by human intelligence? How did the concept of intelligence come into being? What did people infer from intelligence in the historical times? What are the different theories through which we can better understand this concept? Also, what is the significant role of neurocognition in human intelligence? We will be able to fetch answers to all such questions in this module. With the help of various examples, we will understand the concept of intelligence, its emergence, theories, and the role of neurocognition. Figure 1. Stephen Hawking, British cosmologist. Psychology paper number 1. Cognitive science. 3. What do you mean by human intelligence? For more than a century, many of the psychologists and researchers have been trying to formulate the most agreeable definition of human intelligence, but in vain. In our discussion, we would dwell on the following definition given by American psychologist David Wechsler. Intelligence is the aggregate or global capacity of the individual to act purposefully, to think rationally and to deal effectively with his or her environment. Wechsler, 1944, p. 3. Let's consider an example wherein Sarah has to complete her school assignment which is to be submitted the next day and her computer is not working. In such a situation, rather than crying over the computer, she walks over to the cyber cafe to complete her assignment. Can we say Sarah is intelligent? Yes, because she thought rationally and acted purposefully to solve her problem. Can we say Sarah is intelligent? Yes, because she thought rationally and acted purposefully to solve her problem. She also dealt effectively with her environment. Thus, intelligence is majorly about cognitive processes, which involve problem solving, using higher order mental processes and memory. Now, intelligence is an ability possessed by each human being, but differs from person to person. These individual differences are what attract researchers to study about it. Thus, the concept of intelligence majorly focuses on two areas: individual differences in intelligence and assessment of intelligence. As we have studied about these two areas in the previous module, we would now move backward in the historical times and focus on how this concept emerged. 4. Theories of human intelligence. As we studied in the previous section, human intelligence cannot be confined to merely verbal mental competencies, but also the non-verbal ones. Wechsler emphasized intelligence to be a group of two distinct but related mental abilities. But what does a layman understand of these verbal and non-verbal competencies? To broaden the nature and understanding of intelligence, various theories have been developed by the psychologists, about which we would be reading in the following sections. 4.1 Spearman's two-factor theory. Charles Edward Spearman (1863–1945) was an English psychologist who advanced the two-factor theory in 1927. In his theory, he stated that intelligence consists of two factors, namely, G factor and S factor. He described G factor as the general intelligence, which refers to the overall score obtained in an intelligence test. Spearman used the statistical technique of factor analysis to identify different clusters, such as Psychology paper number 1, Cognitive science. Verbal and mathematical reasoning, under which lie the highly correlating behaviors, and thus define the specific mental abilities. For instance, Anna and Peter took an intelligence test which consisted of 20 items, having 10 verbal and 10 mathematical reasoning-based items. Both of them answered 80% of the items correctly and hence, have the same level of general intelligence. However, when analyzed closely, it was found that Anna answered 100% of the mathematical reasoning items correctly and 75% of the verbal reasoning items correctly. On the other hand, Peter was found to answer 75% of the mathematical reasoning items correctly and 100% of the verbal reasoning items correctly. Thus, even if Anna and Peter have same level of general intelligence, they don't possess same specific mental abilities. Anna clearly has a higher ability on the domain of mathematical reasoning, whereas Peter has higher verbal reasoning capacity. Figure 8. Spearman's theory stated that general intelligence consisted of specific mental abilities which differs from person to person. 4.2 Thurstone and the specific mental abilities. Louis Leon Thurstone (1887–1955) was a pioneer in the fields of psychophysics and psychometrics. He proposed the multiple factor theory, denying the importance of Psychology paper number 1, Cognitive science. General intelligence, as he believed that it minimizes the importance of specific abilities which constitutes the human intelligence. Like Spearman, Thurstone also used factor analysis to identify 7 specific mental abilities by forming clusters. These abilities were verbal comprehension, the ability to read, define and understand words. Number, the ability to apply arithmetic operations and understand and solve arithmetic problems. Word fluency, the ability to produce words fluently. Spatial visualization, the ability to mentally visualize objects, e.g., 3D objects. Associative memory, the ability to associate unrelated items and the skill of memorizing and recalling. Inductive reasoning, the ability to identify the problems and their rules and reason the solution. Perceptual speed, the ability to perceive the similarities and differences of the objects. 4.3 Cattell and Horn's theory. Raymond Cattell (1905–1998) proposed a theory of the structure of intelligence in 1941, which was revised and extended by John L. Horn (1929–2006) in 1965. Cattell and Horn used the statistical technique of factor analysis to break down Spearman's G factor and identify two major factors of intelligence, which they named crystallized intelligence GC and fluid intelligence GF. Crystallized intelligence is defined as the ability to use previously acquired knowledge to solve current problems and deal with his or her environment. For example, Kiara was given a mathematical problem by her tuition teacher to be solved within half an hour. She used the formulae learned in the previous class to solve the given problem. Thus, she used her crystallized intelligence for solving the problem. Fluid intelligence is defined as the ability to reason or solve current problems by producing novel and innovative ideas. This part of intelligence doesn't require previously learned information to deal with current situations. For example, it was the use of their fluid intelligence, i.e. creative thinking, which led the Wright brothers to the invention of airplane. Thus, fluid intelligence simply means the ability to think differently and uniquely. Psychology paper number 1, Cognitive Science. 4.4 Carroll's three-stratum model. American psychologist John Bissell Carroll, 1916-2003, proposed a model of intelligence in 1993, in which he gave 3 layers of intelligence. It was based on the factor analytic study of 460 different sets of data acquired by researchers around the world between the years 1935 to 1980. This model consists of the contents of all the 3, Spearman's, Thurstone's and Cattell-Horn's theory. The 3 layers or stratums of cognitive ability this model consists of are general, broad and narrow, set in a hierarchical manner. Psychology paper number 1, Cognitive Science. Psychology paper number 1, Cognitive Science. General, stratum 3, the topmost layer consists of the G factor, which is believed to underlie most of the cognitive activities. Broad, stratum 2, the second layer consists of the 8 broad cognitive factors arranged in descending order from left to right, in terms of the extent to which they are influenced by the G factor. Fluid intelligence is most strongly influenced and processing speed is the least influenced by G. Narrow, stratum I, the bottommost layer consists of almost 70 highly specific abilities that are correlated with the second stratum factors. They reflect the common G factor at the top. Carroll believed that his model provided a complete and in-depth map of the human cognitive abilities, derived with the help of psychometric approach. 4.5 Sternberg's triarchic theory. Robert Jeffrey Sternberg is an American cognitive psychologist who expressed a much wider view of intelligence. He proposed a theory in 1986, in which he defined the psychological processes that influence intellectual behavior and also defined diverse forms of intelligence. This theory consists of 3 forms of intelligence and the 3 underlying psychological processes, thus its name triarchic theory of intelligence. Figure 11. Robert Sternberg, a pioneer in the field of cognitive psychology, the processes that underlie intelligent behavior are divided into 3 specific components. Psychology paper number 1, Cognitive Science. Metacomponents. These are the high order components used to plan out a task performance, execute and regulate it. They include cognitive skills such as identifying a problem, formulating a hypothesis, planning out strategies, testing them and evaluating feedback of the performance. For example, Maria was stuck in a stressful problem of how to complete all her work and enjoy with friends at the same time in the coming week. Hence, to deal with this problem, she used her problem-solving skills to plan out a schedule for the whole week so that she could balance both, work as well as friends. Performance components. These are the mental processes used during the task performance. They include perceptual processing, retrieving schemas from long-term memory and generating responses. For example, on the first morning of the week, Maria revised her schedule for the day which she had planned earlier and created a to-do list in her mind to carry on with her tasks during the day. Thus, she used her performance components for the execution of the planned schedule. Knowledge acquisition components. These are the components which help us learn from our previous experiences, store the information derived from it in the memory and combine new information with the previously acquired information. These abilities cause the individual differences, which exist in the crystallized intelligence. For example, Maria successfully completed her work and also enjoyed with her friends during the week she had planned for. She was again stuck in a similar situation a few months later where she had to balance both, her work as well as family. But, as she had learned from her previous experience, this time she immediately planned a schedule for the week and was able to deal effectively with the situation. This theory defined 3 forms of intelligence that Sternberg believed exists. 1. Analytical intelligence. It involves the problem-solving skills which are academically oriented and are measured by traditional intelligence tests. 2. Practical intelligence. It involves the skills required to cope with the problems and challenges of day-to-day life, and the ability to meet the daily contextual demands. 3. Creative intelligence. It involves the skills to creatively adapt with and solve the novel problems. It involves the ability to produce innovative solutions. Psychology paper number 1, Cognitive Science. 4.6 Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence. Howard Gardner is a strong believer of the concept that intelligence is much more than just mental competence and that intelligence consists of relatively independent intelligences that fulfill various demands to adapt with the environment. Thus, he advanced a theory of multiple intelligences in 1983, in which he defined 8 distinct varieties of adaptive abilities and a possible 9th variety. The 8 intellectual abilities are: 1. Linguistic intelligence. It is the ability to use words to express your feelings. E.g., speakers and journalists use their linguistic intelligence to express their viewpoint. 2. Bodily kinesthetic intelligence. It is the ability to control the movements of the body and manipulate objects in a skillful manner. E.g., doctors use their bodily kinesthetic intelligence to conduct surgeries. 3. Visual spatial intelligence. It is the ability to visualize objects such as 2D, 3D, or 4D objects mentally and solve spatial problems. E.g., architects use their visual spatial intelligence to lay out construction plans of buildings. 4. Musical intelligence. It is the ability to perceive and understand pitch, tone, melody and rhythm and produce music. E.g., singers use their musical intelligence to produce and sing songs. 5. Logical mathematical intelligence. It is the ability to reason mathematically and logically solve arithmetic operations. E.g., mathematicians use their mathematical intelligence to reason logically and solve problems and derive theorems. 6. Interpersonal intelligence. It is the ability to understand, connect and relate well to other people. E.g., mental health professionals such as psychiatrists use their interpersonal intelligence to understand their patients and help them improve. 7. Intrapersonal intelligence. It is the ability to understand oneself. E.g., a 40-year-old working woman Priya uses her interpersonal intelligence to understand herself and her needs, which makes it easier for her to live peacefully and satisfied. 8. Naturalistic intelligence. It is the ability to understand the mechanisms of nature. E.g., zoologists use their natural intelligence to understand the mechanisms of the life of animals. Gardner also gave a ninth possible variety of intelligence, which is as follows. Psychology paper number 1, Cognitive Science. 9. Existential intelligence. It is a philosophically oriented ability, which is used to find answers to the questions about the meaning of one's existence, life and death. 4.7 Mayer-Salovey-Caruso structure of emotional intelligence. Another form of adaptive intelligence is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence refers to the ability to perceive others' emotions accurately, to respond to those emotions appropriately, to understand one's own emotions, and to regulate and control one's own emotional responses. Psychologists John Mayer, Peter Salovey and David Caruso advanced a theory of the structure of emotional intelligence, called Mayer-Salovey-Caruso's structure of emotional intelligence. This theory states that emotional intelligence consists of 4 components. These components or branches are: 1. Perceiving emotions. It consists of measuring people's ability to perceive others' emotional expressions and understand these expressions. For example, in photographs, as well as the emotional meaning conveyed by different landscapes. 2. Using emotions to facilitate thoughts. It consists of measuring people's ability to identify emotions and accordingly facilitate their own thought in order to deal effectively with other people or situations. For example, a girl finds her friend weeping and immediately processes her thoughts that she is required to console her friend. Thus, she is good at using emotions to facilitate thoughts. 3. Understanding emotions. It consists of measuring people's ability to be aware of and understand one's own emotions. People who are well aware of how, when and why their emotions change in intensity or type, they are good at understanding emotions of their own as well as of others. 4. Managing emotions. It consists of measuring people's ability to manage and control one's own emotions and of others as well. It is important to manage one's own emotions to maintain harmony and achieve personal success and others' emotions to maintain peaceful relationships. For example, a manager is required to manage his own as well as his subordinates' emotions in order to work in harmony and achieve goals successfully. The Mayer-Salovey-Caruso Emotional Intelligence Test (MSCEIT) was developed to measure each component of this theory. It consists of specific tasks to measure these components and evaluate a person's emotional intelligence. Psychology paper number 1, Cognitive Science. 5. Neurocognition in intelligence. So far we have studied what human intelligence means, its historical view and how modern theories have described its nature and structure. Now let's study the role of neurocognition in the field of intelligence. But before that, let's understand the meaning of neurocognitive psychology. 5.1 What do you understand by neurocognitive psychology? Neurocognitive psychology is a branch of psychology which studies about the neurocognitive functions, which are the cognitive functions that are associated with the neural pathways of the brain or specific brain areas. It studies about the influence of these functions on the psychological behavior of the person. In simple words, it is a study of the impact of brain functions on the behavioral patterns of the person. 5.2 What role does neurocognition plays in intelligence? The field of neurocognition plays a significant role in intelligence, as it addresses various biological factors to measure intelligence. These distinct biological factors are: head size correlates to the brain volume. As we have read, the historical perspective of intelligence believed that size of the head defined the volume of the brain and thus, intelligence. However, significant findings have revealed that not the size of brain, but several other properties of the brain may define intelligence. These properties, which are expected to define intelligence, include number of neurons in the brain, the efficiency of the process of myelination, formation of myelin sheath around the nerve, and the number of creases of the brain. Information processing speed. The structuralist view of psychology measured the intelligence by measuring the reaction time. It attempted to find out how quickly does the brain process and react to the information it receives from the sensory stimuli. Thus, information processing speed is correlated with the traditional intelligence tests. E.g., musicians are found to be sensitive towards sound variations, as they quickly process the sensory information received from sound-producing stimuli and produce music. Brain electrical activity. Electrical activity in the brain is significantly correlated to the intelligence test scores. This electrical activity is studied by the field of neuroscience to identify its relationship with cognitive abilities. These activities include the process in which sensory information is received by. Psychology paper number 1, Cognitive Science. The neurotransmitters in the neuron and transferred by them to the receiving dendrites. The speed of this transfer is studied by neurocognitive psychology to identify its relationship with intelligence. Energy consumption in the brain. Various researches conducted by the neuroscientists have revealed that the neurons consume energy just like other body cells do. They have further found out that brains consume and break down glucose at a fast pace when it is performing any cognitive activity by its choice. Whereas, it consumes less glucose when it is performing any cognitive activity that is assigned to it. Intelligent people thus utilize extensive brain power in ineffective ways. 6. Summary. Intelligence is the aggregate or global capacity of the individual to act purposefully, to think rationally and to deal effectively with his or her environment. Psychologists and researchers develop theories to determine and explain in detail the structure of intelligence, namely, Spearman's two-factor theory, Thurstone's specific mental abilities, crystallized and fluid intelligence, the three-stratum model, Sternberg's triarchic theory, Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence and model of emotional intelligence. Neurocognition and various studies and researches made in this field reveal that the biological factors of brain and the electrical activities taking place inside the brain reflects the intelligence of a person. 2. Introduction. Humans require the use of intelligence in every aspect of their daily lives. From practical to emotional to social and many more such areas. Every individual varies in his or her cognitive abilities in comparison to other people. So, can we say that individuals differ on the basis of intelligence they possess? If it is so, then how these individual differences on intelligence are measured? How is an intelligence test constructed and what standards do scientists require to consider an intelligence test good? How does cultural bias influence the individual differences in intelligence? Moreover, what do various studies reveal about the role of heredity and environment in the development of intelligence? In this module, we would find answers to all such questions. In this discussion, we will focus on various researches made in the field of intelligence, which would help us better understand the concept of its measurement and heredity and environment's role in its development. 3. Define. Researches have been made, theories have been developed since past 100 years, and still the most agreeable definition for intelligence remains undiscovered. But, to give a brief description about what intelligence is, we would dwell on the following definition of intelligence. Intelligence is an individual's ability to learn from his or her experiences, attain knowledge from those experiences and then use that knowledge to deal accordingly with his or her environment. Think of a situation in which you have to choose between a bicycle and a car, by which you would be traveling to a place 2 kilometers away. Now, choice of the mode of transport which you make requires the use of practical intelligence. Consider another situation in which you see a stranger crying on the roadside. Here, your emotional intelligence works. Psychology paper number 1, Cognitive Science. Up to make you empathize with that stranger. Think of one more situation in the examination hall, where you get a question which seems unfamiliar with your preparation. You might try all the methods you know to solve that question and might end up with a solution. Thus, we require intelligence on a daily basis to make choices, solve problems, and establish bonds with others and much more. Intelligence is therefore a very crucial part of every individual's cognition, which has been understood as not a single ability but a global capacity of distinct intellectual abilities. However, every individual perceives same situations differently and may use their intelligence in different ways to cope with daily life problems. This gives rise to a question: how can we measure these differences in intellectual abilities? The following section will shed some light on the same question and help us understand how intelligence is measured. 4. Measurement of intelligence. Let us consider the above-mentioned situations and see how individuals use their intelligence to get across each of them. One person might choose a car and the other might choose the bicycle to travel a distance of 2 kilometers. Also, one individual might reach to the weeping person and empathize with him and the other individual might not reach up and just go away. Similarly, one might be able to solve the unfamiliar question in the question paper and others might not be able to. So can we say that those who are able to find a solution are more intelligent than others, or those who opt for a bicycle and those who empathize with the weeping person are more intelligent than those who opt for car and do not empathize with the weeping person? Measurement of intelligence would be a better option to answer such questions. 4.1 How can intelligence be assessed? One way to understand this complex phenomenon of intelligence is to assess it with the help of intelligence testing. Intelligence testing refers to the estimation of people's intellectual ability through their performance on various tasks or test papers designed to assess the mental competencies. Thus, intelligence test is a series of tasks designed to measure a person's ability to think rationally, act purposefully and deal effectively with different situations. The score derived from the assessment of an intelligence test is known as an intelligence quotient (IQ), which is a term coined by psychologist William Stern in the early years of 1900s. The first intelligence test was invented by French psychologist Alfred Binet, 1857-1911, in the early years of 20th century, with an aim to discover the children with special needs and learning abilities and help them cope with the school curriculum. In 1905, Binet and his colleague Theodore Simon upgraded Binet's intelligence scale and named it Binet-Simon test. This revised version was computed while taking into consideration every student's chronological age because children's mental competencies advance as their age increases over time. In 1916, Stanford University psychologist Louis Terman revised the Binet-Simon test and produced the Stanford Psychology paper number 1, Cognitive Science. Binet Intelligence Scale, which became most popular in the USA for a number of years. This test defined intelligence in terms of 4 distinct cognitive abilities. Verbal reasoning, i.e., the ability to solve verbal problems. Quantitative reasoning, i.e., the ability to solve arithmetical problems. Abstract visual reasoning, i.e., the ability to solve problems which include geometric shapes with complex relationship. Short-term memory, i.e., the ability to preserve sensory information in the working memory for a short period of time. 2 decades later, psychologist David Wechsler developed a test which proved to be a strong competitor to the Stanford Binet test. Wechsler believed that intelligence should be measured as group of distinct but related intellectual verbal and non-verbal abilities, which Stanford Binet did not emphasize on. Therefore, he developed distinct tests for adults and children which measured both verbal and non-verbal abilities. Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale (WAIS) was developed in 1939, followed by the development of Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children (WISC) in 1955 and later, the development of Wechsler Preschool and Primary Scale of Intelligence (WPPSI) in 1967. Since then, Wechsler scales have been the most widely individually administered intelligence tests in the USA. Intelligence quotient (IQ). Intelligence quotient was a term coined by psychologist William Stern to define the score derived from the assessment of the intelligence test. Louis Terman used this concept to develop the Stanford Binet test. Stern's 1912 formula of IQ was to divide the mental age MA by the chronological age CA, which is the number of years passed since birth, and multiply the result by 100 to get rid of the decimal points. The final result is called the intelligence quotient or IQ. For example, a person who is 20 years old takes the intelligence test, scores a mental age of 15 years old, i.e., he is able to answer questions which are up to the level of a 15-year-old, so his IQ would be IQ equals 15/20 x 100 equals 75. The intelligence quotient allows us to compare the intelligence levels of people of different ages. Intelligence tests are widely used in the Western societies to make important decisions such as those related to education, occupation, and clinical decisions. Such tests have become an important tool for cognitive psychologists, who seek to measure the cognitive development, stability, and change over a period of time. IQ equals MA CAX 100. Psychology paper number 1, Cognitive Science. 4.2 How are intelligence tests constructed? To design an intelligence test, the first and foremost need is to decide which specific behaviors serve as indicators of the mental competencies we desire to assess. Next arises a need to decide the items that would allow us to assess those behaviors. Last but not the least, there is a need to collect the evidence regarding the validity of the tests, i.e., our sample of items are actually measuring the mental competencies which our test aims to measure. Now the question arises of how to meet these requirements, the answer to which lies in the following key concepts of measurement. Reliability. Validity. Standardization. Let's take a hypothetical example to understand this concept of test construction. For example, a Professor Martin believes that an elementary class student's, i.e. 10 to 16 years of age, intelligence is determined by his or her vocabulary or verbal ability. Now, in order to test his hypothesis, Martin must construct an intelligence test measuring the verbal ability of elementary class students. As he has already decided the specific behavior which serves as an indicator of mental competencies, his next requirement would be to devise the items to assess the verbal ability. His last requirement would be to collect the evidence ensuring the validity of the test, for which the sample items of his test must measure the verbal ability of the students. Let's understand how Professor Martin meets all these requirements. Reliability refers to the consistency of the test results. A test is considered to have higher reliability if it produces similar results under consistent conditions. In other words, a test is considered to be reliable if it reveals similar results each time it is taken by the same person or group of people under similar situations. Thus, in case of Professor Martin's test, his test would be reliable if it produces the same result regarding their verbal abilities, each time he gives it to the same person or group of people under similar conditions. There are 3 types of methods used to measure reliability. Table 1. Methods of reliability meaning. Psychology paper number 1, Cognitive Science. Table 1, Types of reliability and their meaning. Test-retest reliability is assessed by correlating the scores obtained on the same test by the same group of people on 2 separate occasions, over time. A test is given to a group of people and after some hours or days, that test is again given to the same group of people and the 2 set of scores so obtained are correlated. Higher correlation among the sets indicates higher reliability. Internal reliability is assessed by measuring the correlation among the items of the test. It simply refers to the consistency of measurement within the test itself. Higher correlation indicates higher reliability. Interjudge reliability is assessed by correlating the judgment of different scorers for the same test. It simply refers to the consistency of judgment when different scorers score the same test or event. Higher correlation indicates higher reliability. Validity refers to the extent to which a test measures what it aims to measure. A test is considered to be valid if it appropriately measures the mental competency it is designed to measure. Thus, in case of Professor Martin's test, his test would be valid if it actually measures the verbal ability of the students for which it is designed. There are 3 types of methods used to measure validity. Table 2. Test-retest reliability. Reliability is assessed by correlating test scores obtained by the same group of people on 2 separate occasions, over time. Internal reliability. Reliability is assessed by measuring the correlation among the items of the test. Higher correlation indicates higher reliability. Interjudge reliability. Reliability is assessed by correlating the judgment of different scorers for the same test or event. Psychology paper number 1, Cognitive Science. Methods of validity. Meaning. Construct validity. It measures the extent to which the test actually measures the psychological construct it is constructed to measure. Content validity. It measures the extent to which the items of the test measure all the skills that are assumed to underlie the psychological construct it is designed to measure. Criterion related validity. It measures the extent to which the scores on the test successfully predict some future behavior, which is assumed to be affected by the psychological construct, which the test is designed to measure. Table 2. Types of validity and their meaning. Construct validity measures the extent to which the test successfully measures the psychological construct, verbal ability. In Martin's example, it is designed to measure. A correlation is measured between the test scores and behaviors other than the one being measured. Lower the correlation, higher is the validity of the test. Content validity measures the extent to which the items of the test items measuring the verbal abilities of students. In Martin's example, successfully measures the psychological construct it is designed to measure. In Martin's example, the content validity would measure the extent to which the items of his test measures the verbal abilities of elementary class students. Criterion-related validity measures the extent to which the scores on the test successfully predict some present or future behavior, which is assumed to be affected by psychological construct being measured by the test. In Martin's example, the criterion-related validity would measure the extent to which the test scores of the students successfully predict their future behavior, which is assumed to be affected by their verbal abilities, which the test is designed to measure. It is important to note here that, if a test is reliable, it might or might not be valid. But, if a test is valid, it is definitely reliable. Standardization refers to a twofold process, which means it has two aspects: one, development of norms and standards, and two, consistent methods of test administration. The first aspect of standardization is norms, which refers to the test scores derived from a large sample of the target population for which the test is designed. These norms help in providing a meaning to the so obtained IQ score by the test taker. The second aspect of psychology paper number 1, cognitive science. Standardization is the consistent methods of test administration, which refers to the method which is used to administer the test on a person or a group of people and which remains same despite of whosoever is the examiner or test giver. The norms which are collected from a sample population form a normal curve or distribution, see Fig. 1, in which the scores are most frequent around the mean, and become less frequent as we move away from the mean. Figure 1. The bell curve of intelligence. Thus, Figure 1 shows an IQ score of 100 cuts the distribution into two equal halves, where equal percentage of population score above and below this mean score. The extreme points of the distribution indicate the higher and lower scores obtained by fewer people. Deviation IQ. Since the formula of IQ had a few drawbacks such as comparison across same age group was not possible with the IQ scores, David Wechsler 1939 developed the concept of deviation IQ, which explains the person's intellectual ability in comparison to his per age group, represented by the deviation of his standard score from the mean. Wechsler's IQ tests have a mean of 100 and a standard deviation of 15. Thus, Wechsler's intelligence scales now use the method of deviation IQ to evaluate the result of test takers. The Flynn effect. A remarkable discovery by New Zealand researcher James Flynn revealed that most of the world's population is progressively scoring higher on the intelligence tests. As a result of the Flynn effect, the IQ scores have had an increase of 28 points in the USA since the year 1910, and a same level of increase has been observed in psychology paper number 1, cognitive science. Britain since 1942. The influential factors lying behind such a rise are expected to be the availability of better nutrition for both males as well as females, which has led to an increased brain functioning. Other plausible explanations are today's richer and complex learning environment, which has given rise to a need of complex coping abilities, and technological advances in today's era, which has helped in the development of abstract and more logical thinking of individuals. 4.3 Impact of cultural bias on intelligence testing. Intelligence is a universal phenomenon studied and researched upon by various researchers. However, a great deal of challenges are faced by psychologists and researchers who aspire to study the concept of intelligence in people across the world. People come from different cultures and socioeconomic backgrounds, holding entirely different beliefs and customs in comparison to others. IQ tests taken by people who are culturally very different from the person who has constructed the test are not likely to perform well on such tests. Some people might not be aware of the language in which the test has been developed, and those people might end up with poor scores on the test. Some people are even deprived of literacy and are still underprivileged in many corners of the world till date. Such a large cultural diversity existing among the humans all over makes it difficult for the researchers to develop an intelligence test which is free of cultural bias, i.e., it can be taken by any person irrespective of their culture. The concept of intelligence holds different meaning for different cultures. For example, for a highly complex and advanced culture such as the urban culture, being intelligent for a teenager might mean having knowledge about how to operate a computer. Whereas, for a simple and primitive culture such as the rural cultural, being intelligent for a teenager might mean having knowledge about how to work at farms. Thus, scores on an intelligence test assessing the knowledge about computer skills might be higher for urban kids and absolutely nil for rural kids. But, this doesn't imply that urban kids are more intelligent than rural kids. Thus, this major drawback of culture bias makes it difficult to compare people from different cultures on the basis of their intelligence. Hence, to meet the challenges posed by cross-cultural intelligence assessment, psychologists have developed nonverbal tests so as to assess the nonverbal intellectual abilities such as problem solving, evaluate abstract patterns, etc. It helps reflect the nonverbal intellectual ability of the test taker and is not influenced by the culture. A most popular nonverbal test used to assess the adjective ability is the Raven's progressive matrices. Another major approach taken to minimize the cultural bias is to develop intelligence tests, which contain items which uses the culture-specific knowledge and skills of the test taker to solve them. This helps reflect the intelligence and coping and adapting ability of the test taker with respect to his or her culture. Scores so obtained on such tests predict the successful functioning of the test taker in that culture. Psychology paper number 1, cognitive science. Intelligence. However, one important thing to note here is that no intelligence test can ever be culture-free, even if it is culture-fair. 5. Role of heredity and environment. Having learned about how intelligence is measured and the invention and construction of intelligence testing, let's move on to the most important question. Intelligence is mostly affected by which of the two, nature or nurture? Let's engrave for the answer in the following discussion. Nature, heredity or genes, and nurture, or environment both influence intelligence, working in a relationship dependent on each other, see Fig. 2. Nature influences on how nurture affects the intelligence of an individual. Similarly, nurture influences on how nature affects the intelligence of that individual. Let's understand better with the help of an example. For instance, prenatal factors such as alcohol consumption by the mother affects the gene-directed behavior of the newborn baby. In this way, environment influences the effect of heredity on intelligence of the baby. Consider another example. The gene-directed behavior of a person influences what kind of a people he chooses to be friends with, further influencing the effect of that chosen company of friends on his intelligence. In this way, heredity influences the effect of environment on intelligence of that person. Figure 2. Interdependence of heredity and environment and their influence on intelligence. Thus, nature and nurture form a vicious circle, constantly depending upon each other and together influencing the individual differences in intelligence. Heredity environment. Psychology paper number 1, cognitive science. 5.1 How do heredity and environment influence the development of intelligence? Genetic factors clearly have a strong influence on individuals' intelligence. More than two-thirds of the group variations in intelligence is due to genetic factors, as reported by research Plomin et al., 2007. Also, the research suggests that the more the genes people have in common, the more similar IQ they tend to have. Twin studies made by various researchers suggest that identical twins, monozygotic twins, are found to have a slightly higher similarity in IQ than do fraternal twins, dizygotic twins. A plausible explanation behind the same is the availability of more genes in common in identical twins due to formation via single zygote, and comparatively lesser genes in common in fraternal twins due to formation by two different zygotes. Fig. 3. Genetic factors become more important as we age. Reason being, genetic factors more strongly affect intelligence as more advanced cognitive processes emerge during development. Also, people select and create environment that they find appropriate according to their genetic factors. Thus, genes play an important role as we develop. Environment, on the other hand, accounts for 30–50% of individual differences in IQ. Environment can be divided into two parts on the basis of the twin studies and research is made. Both shared as well as non-shared environment exert influence on intelligence. Shared environment refers to the family environment which both twins, identical or fraternal, share. Whereas, non-shared environment refers to the different family environment in which both twins, identical or fraternal, respectively live. Fig. 4. Figure 3. Identical twins tend to have slightly higher similarity in IQ than do fraternal twins. Psychology paper number 1. Cognitive science. Thus, researchers have suggested that shared environment have a slightly higher influence on the IQ of twins as compared to the non-shared environment. Hence, family and home environment play a major role in the development of intelligence. Identical twins raised in the same environment are likely to have higher similarity in IQ than those raised in the non-shared environment. Similarly, fraternal twins raised in the same environment are also likely to have slightly higher similarity in IQ as compared to those raised in the non-shared environment. Socioeconomic status as well as better education also play an important role in the development of intelligence. Recall the reasons behind the Flynn effect, which clearly states the influential role of environment, availability of better nutrition, better education facilities, technological advances and complex learning environment on the increase of IQ scores across the globe. Figure 4. Children raised in shared environment are likely to have a slightly higher IQ than those raised in non-shared environment. 6. Summary. Intelligence is an individual's ability to learn from his or her experiences, attain knowledge from those experiences and then use that knowledge to deal accordingly with his or her environment. Intelligence can be assessed with the help of intelligence testing, which refers to the estimation of people's intellectual ability through their performance on various tasks or test papers designed to assess the mental competencies. Intelligence tests can be constructed by meeting the following requirements: standardization, reliability, and validity. Cultural bias leads to a difficulty of developing an intelligence test that can be administered on all people across the globe. However, psychologists have developed nonverbal tests so as to assess the nonverbal intellectual abilities, and also, they have developed specific intelligence types of environment: shared environment, non-shared environment. Psychology paper number 1. Cognitive science. Tests which help reflect the intelligence and coping and adapting ability of the test taker with respect to his or her culture. However, no intelligence test can ever be culture-free, even if it is culture-fair. Nature and nurture form a vicious circle, constantly affecting each other and together influencing the individual differences in intelligence. Identical twins are found to have a slightly higher similarity in IQ than do fraternal twins. Researchers have also suggested that shared environment have a slightly higher influence on the intelligence of twins as compared to the non-shared environment.